As the first of many guest characters make their way to Mortal Kombat 11, with Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator the first to do so, one can't help but wonder what might be on the horizon for NetherRealm's other fighting franchise, Injustice. Based on the DC Comics characters, the Mortal Kombat studio's rendition of the DC universe has proven wildly successful since first showing up in 2013. And while fans continue to speculate what the third game may entail, whether it be specific story beats or even the many heroes and villains who could appear, it's worth asking what guest figures could appear too. Injustice 2 had a superb selection of guest characters to choose from, including the likes of Hellboy, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and even Raiden. It was NetherRealm's best guest selection yet, and while MK11 has come close with Spawn and Joker joining the T800 within the next few months, the best is still yet to come. But how do the studio top the guest rosters for Injustice and MK in what will presumably be their next game? I have a few in mind, so I'm Yoon from WhatCulture, and here are 10 guest characters NetherRealm must include in Injustice 3. Number 10. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, better known as the greatest to his contemporaries, is probably the most thematically appropriate guest character NetherRealm could add to Injustice 3, and that's thanks to his appearance alongside the Man of Steel in the famous Superman vs. Muhammad Ali comic from 1978. The issue, which was adapted and drawn by Neil Adams from an original story by Dennis O'Neil, saw the world heavyweight champion join forces with Superman to stop an alien invasion. The conceit here is that the aliens demand that Earth's greatest fighter does battle with one of their own champions, and with both Superman and Ali putting forward their name, the two decide to have a fight of their own to determine who really deserves the honor. Given the entire premise behind Injustice is that every fighter is brought to a level playing field, it makes sense that Ali, the first to best Superman when the character didn't have his powers, should have a role in Injustice 3. Number 9. Shaggy. No, seriously, Shaggy. In what was potentially 2019's greatest meme, the rebranding of Shaggy Rogers from Hungry Stoner to Dragon Ball Fighter saw the character constantly get requested as DLC for Mortal Kombat 11. That obviously never came to pass, but WB do own the character, and with actor Matthew Lillard even being aware of the meme in question, there's plenty of impetus to bring the character to Injustice 3. The overlap doesn't stop there, of course. Shaggy first crossed over with DC Comics during the original Hanna-Barbera Scooby-Doo cartoon from the 1970s, which featured 2 crossover episodes with Adam West's Batman. Factor in a recent animated crossover released in 2018, and it's clear WB are more than happy to have Mystery Inc.'s lanky scaredy cat cross paths with the Dark Knight when the situation calls for it. In Injustice's case, the situation does indeed call for it. Yes, it's a completely different and decidedly maudlin context for the character to pop up, but who could possibly pass up the opportunity to see Shaggy battling DC's heroes and villains? Number 8. Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd is a staple of the British comics scene, dating all the way back to when he made his debut in the pages of 2000 AD in 1977. Although the character's satirical nature has never really translated all that well to live action, he's featured in some of the most compelling comics of the 20th century, and has even made the occasional foray into the gaming medium too. Rebellion Developments currently hold the license to the character, but have as of yet only released one fully fledged game based on the Dredd license. Clearly, the character deserves another shot at a game, and it's why Rebellion should try and get Dredd to appear in NetherRealm's next title. Were the character to cross over into Injustice 3, it wouldn't be without precedent either. Dredd has featured in a number of comic book crossovers throughout the years, with his most famous actually bringing the Judge together with the Dark Knight in 1991. Given Dredd's iconic design, skill set, and notoriety, he should be a no-brainer to feature in the next Injustice, especially if players can reenact Alan Grant, John Wagner, and Simon Bisley's comic. Number 7. Usagi Yojimbo. Injustice 2 had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they were great, but there's another anthropomorphic blade-wielding comic book character who should appear in the threequel. Usagi Yojimbo, a samurai rabbit from the mind of Stan Sakai, is just that very character. Yojimbo is even fairly synonymous with the Turtles too, having crossed over into their adventures at various points over the years, while the skill set and icon status more than justify a place in Injustice 3's inevitable post-release content drop. One factor that could potentially benefit Yojimbo's chances of popping up in Injustice 3 is the fact the character is currently on the cusp of starring in a brand new animated series, courtesy of Gaumont Studios. Nailing on a cameo in Injustice would be a great way to promote the series, and well, who wouldn't want Usagi to get the AAA treatment? Number 6. He-Man and She-Ra. Mattel's Masters of the Universe is one of the most iconic toy lines in existence, and one that probably wouldn't have existed had it not been for DC Comics' help in charting the mythology of the series even before the cartoon came into existence. As such, it feels like a great time to bring Prince Adam and She-Ra into the next Injustice. The latter Grifter because she's currently making waves in animation, and the former because he's just as iconic. Aside from both characters' respective histories, the sheer novelty of having Adam walk onto the screen, shout, "I have the power," and then transforming into He-Man would just never wear off. Likewise for She-Ra chanting the nearly as familiar "for the honor of Grayskull," just before assuming her own warrior form. Heck, maybe even throw Skeletor in for good measure. It would all be worth it just to hear Alan Oppenheimer's evil voice again. Also, to see him exit by going through a mirror and then punching it. Yes, please. Number 5. The G.I. Joe. From one beloved 80s toy line to another now in G.I. Joe, a real American hero. Hasbro's license is only beaten out in terms of popularity by Transformers, but while the robots in disguise would be a logistical nightmare to working for the next Injustice, there are plenty of characters from G.I. Joe who would slot effortlessly into it. The likes of Snake Eyes, the Baroness, Scarlet, Cobra Commander, and other characters with somehow even more ludicrous names would all make sense as a guest character. There's not really a specific figure that needs to feature either, as all would do the job equally as well as each other. All that said, having the chance to hear Cobra Commander chant his name as he did in the cartoon intro would be too hilarious to pass up. So maybe he beats out the others when it comes to who deserves an Injustice cameo the most. Cobra! Number 4. Grifter. Wildstorm may technically be a DC property, and Grifter himself may have even appeared in the main DC universe after the start of the New 52, but it's not so connected to the publisher that they should be considered DC characters per se. For those not in the know, Wildcat is a Jim Lee Brandon Choi creation that emerged at the start of the 90s during the founding of Image Comics. The Wildstorm universe was then sold to DC as the decade drew to a close, during which time they featured in their own animated series, had their own merchandise range and video game. The following decades have seen Lee and Choi's creation met with less interest, but it's a truly valuable property and one that's often been underutilized in recent years. They have the potential for bigger and better things, and so it's with that in mind that any Wildcat would feel perfectly at home in an Injustice sequel. In this case, Grifter seems the most appropriate choice. He receives the most amount of attention out of any of the group these days, while his skills of firearms and telekinesis would also play to NetherRealm's strengths. Number 3. Buffy Summers. Although DC has an amazing selection of supernatural characters, from Constantine to Etrigan, Deadman, and of course Zatanna, there are surprisingly few who dabble specifically with vampires. That's where Injustice's guest roster can come in, and who better to fill that role than Buffy Summers herself. Buffy is one of the most beloved TV characters of all time, and one who's gone on to experience great success in comics. First in the Dark Horse continuation of the TV show, and second in the Boom Studios revamp that rebooted the character as a teenager in 2019. Compared to most other licensed properties, Buffy's actually had a relatively successful time when it comes to video games too. The 2002 title and its follow-up, Chaos Bleeds, were both met with positive reviews and illustrated how the character could easily translate to the gaming medium, given the right treatment. Sure, a fighting game may not initially seem like it will lend itself well to the character, but NetherRealm could make it work. Number 2, the T-1000. The T-800 may be the most famous Terminator in Skynet's arsenal, but there's also one that's slightly more menacing, the T-1000. Terminator 2 Judgment Day's liquid metal assassin was an ominous presence when he first burst onto screens in 1991, and one who potentially even lends itself better to the fighting game format than its bulkier, arnier counterparts. If Robert Patrick's menacing stare isn't enough to sell you on the character, then their equally menacing skill set surely will. The T-1000 can shapeshift into pretty much anything it wants to, has an array of deadly blades to fall in, and can even imitate other characters. The latter ability would allow the robo-assassin to mimic other movesets, another bonus given their base abilities are already pretty great. 2019's various Terminator-based video game crossovers have been pretty weird, but there's no point calling it a day until the T-1000 gets its due. And number 1, the Green Ranger. Like a couple of the other properties here, the Power Rangers aren't new to crossovers with DC Comics. In fact, they're actually one of the most recent non-DC properties to link up with the Justice League, courtesy of the brilliant Justice League Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series written by Tom Taylor and drawn by Stephen Byrne. Taylor, coincidentally, also wrote the Injustice comic for DC, so there's that too. Everyone familiar with the Power Rangers has their own favourite iteration and Ranger, but only the most important should feature in Injustice. To many, that'll no doubt be Tommy Oliver, who first burst onto TV screens in Mighty Morphin's 17th episode, titled Green with Evil. Perhaps one of the coolest things about the prospect of the Green Ranger getting involved with Injustice is the fact that Tommy Oliver's original actor, Jason David Frank, loves the role. It wouldn't be out of the question for him to voice the character if they were to appear in Injustice, while the sheer array of outfits he donned throughout the Power Rangers history means NetherRealm would have plenty of gear options to choose from as well. Consider a Mighty Morphin introduction to each battle, a Megazord super move and more, and you're left with one of the coolest prospects to get a start in Injustice 3. But I want to know which guest characters you want to see in Injustice 3. Please let me know down in the comments below, like, share and subscribe if you haven't already, and head back on over to whatculture.com/gaming for more stuff like this every day. I've been Ewan. Hurl your favorite cartoon intros at me on Twitter at EwanRuinsThings, and I'll see you next time. Bye!